Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, the Corvette's behind me. We're going to be bleeding the brakes today. Got a question for you guys. Have you ever had to bleed the brakes but you're by yourself and you don't have any help? There's a few different companies out there that are selling these one-man do-it-yourself brake bleeders. And on the cheap end of the scale, you've got like companies like Harbor Freight, and the more expensive end of the deal, you got like Motive and a few other guys that sell them. And I think the Harbor Freight kit's like 30 bucks and the Motive kit's like 100 or even more. I've seen those go very expensive. So did you guys know that there is actually a much cheaper option, and all you have to do is go to your local hardware store and you can get all the stuff you need? For example, I've got this 1 gallon garden sprayer that I just picked up locally. And we're going to show you today how to take this garden sprayer and make it into a pressurized brake bleeding system. That way you don't have to have someone in the car pumping the brakes. You can just pressurize this tank, which will in turn pressurize the master cylinder, and you'll be able to bleed the brakes by just opening up the bleeder on the back of the caliper. So let's get started on how we're gonna make this tool. The first thing that you're gonna need is a garden sprayer. I picked this up locally, like I said, for real cheap. And this is the 1 gallon version. There are some smaller like handheld version of this, but those were actually more expensive than this. This was only like $9 or $10. And the smaller version, I don't think has the pressure that you're gonna need. You're gonna need between 10 and 20 pounds PSI for this to work properly. And the little handheld version, I just don't think will pump that high. It might, but this will be a lot easier. You got a much bigger handle and this will take more brake fluid. So that's the first thing you're going to need. The second thing that you're going to need is actually a master cylinder cap. You can do this a couple different ways. I've seen some people buy like the actual professional tool, you know, that fits, or the universal kits that kind of use like a rubber gasket. Well, I went to my local auto parts store, and this is a Dorman master cylinder cap. The cap was like $6 and the rubber gasket was another $6. So you're like 12 bucks into this. And the last part you're going to need, as you guys can see, is going to be a hose barb fitting. I think the fitting was like $1 something locally. So you're going to need those 4 tools. You're going to need the garden sprayer, the master cylinder cap, the master cylinder cap gasket, and that barb fitting. The reason you're going to need that gasket is because I've actually put the cap on the car. This cap fits the Corvette and my truck actually, so I'm going to get 2 cars out of this instead of just 1. And I put it on the car, but it was loose. You have to put that gasket in there to help seal the actual cap. And when you put that gasket in there, it will make up that difference between the cap and the plastic cap and the plastic tank. So it should seal this just fine. So those are the 4 parts you're gonna need. The first step you're gonna have to do is, and then I grabbed the hose barb. This hose barb is a 1/4 inch hose barb, and all of the tubing on the sprayers that I've seen have all been a 3/8 outer and a 1/4 inch inner diameter. So what you need is a 1/4 inch diameter hose barb fitting. The second step you're going to have to do is actually take some RTV or silicone, whatever you want, and fill in there's a channel in here, and you don't want air leaking out of that. So what you do is fill that in first. I let that dry. And then what I did, I drilled my hole. I drilled a pilot hole with a small drill bit. Then I used my step bit, unibit, whatever you want to call it, drilled that out to a 1/2 inch, and then I put the hose barb fitting into the cap, threaded it, and I just put some more RTV on the bottom of here just to make sure that it seals up. So there are a few different ways of getting this set up. I've seen some guys use like the universal kit caps where it's just like a metal plate. It fits over the master cylinder and it tightens down. Those are like the professional way. I saw one person use a PVC like cap with a hose barb and an O-ring. Saw that, I'm like, but he had an import, so I was like, that's not gonna work in my application. I saw another person use this master cylinder cap, and I'm like, that's a good idea. So my Corvette and the truck, my GMC 2500, both happen to use that same master cylinder size cap. So this one tool will be good for 2 cars. Alright guys, as you can see, I put the cap on the end of the hose barb fitting. I put a small hose clamp on here just to make sure it doesn't come flying off. Alright guys, as you guys can see, I cleaned up any silicone that was on the mating surface or the turning surface inside the cap, and that way we should be good and not have anything fall into the master cylinder. So let's go put this thing on and try it out. Hey guys, as you guys can see, the bleeder is actually on the car and it's working great. I've managed to bleed 3 out of the 4 brakes. Last night I was working on the 3rd brake, but unfortunately I ran out of fluid. And I'm not just using a generic fluid on here. I'm either using Motul or Brembo brake fluids. They're synthetic brake fluids. Just depends what I have on stock at the time. And right now I've got some Motul. I've used both. I have Brembo fluid in the SS. I have Motul in the Corvette. And can't really say I've noticed a huge difference between those 2 brake fluids. But honestly, guys, I'm not like road coursing my car. I'm autocrossing it at max and drag racing, which drag racing, you go, you slow down, you park the car. So, you know, I'm not really beating on these brake systems as much as other people might be. So, but let's show you the bleeding process. So as you guys can see, I have the reservoir. It's pumped full of air, and I've got some brake fluid on the bottom. And here's the cap. There is a little bit of weight on the cap. That's just to help press down the rubber gasket against the top of the lid. I've noticed that the lid likes to seep air just a little bit. I mean, you can hear it, but it's not like psh, like it'll hold pressure, but just putting a little bit of weight on top of the cap will help seal it and make sure all your fluid gets in. Now guys, the one thing I did learn from last night was this system will waste a lot of brake fluid, because I was on the back working on one side. I had to come to the other side, you know, take the wheel off, you know, take the lugs off, all that stuff. So, but what I learned was you guys should actually relieve the pressure between, you know, between jobs. So that way, bleed one brake, bleed the pressure, go to the other side. If you have to take the wheel off or any extended amount of time, you know, just pump it back up. It takes 5 to 10 pumps, that's it. So you got build a little bit of pressure in there, bleed it, you know. And bleeding this doesn't take long at all. I may take, honestly, a minute at max per side. Like, it's not bad. Now let me clarify that it actually takes probably about a minute per bleeding screw. And these PBRs on the Corvette and the Brembos over on the SS, they've got a bleeding bolt on the top of each side of the caliper. So, you know, front of the disc and rear of the disc, you're gonna have to bleed that twice. So it takes like 2 minutes. It's not bad at all. And honestly, guys, this car has been opened up for weeks. I didn't have any, you know, I removed the entire rear cradle for the trans and all that. I messed around with the front with this whole line lock setup, and I thought I was gonna have trouble bleeding the system. Really only ran into trouble when I ran out of fluid last night. Like I literally got half of the 3rd brake. So the passenger front, I got the outer done, but the inner, it would not bleed. And like I bled and bled and bled it. I opened, closed it, put more pressure in it. Then I realized I ran out of fluid, and I only have 1 quart of fluid in there. So it's like, not even 1 quart, 1 bottle of fluid in there. And without that bottle of fluid in there, it just didn't have enough pressure in the, I guess, the straw for the pickup tube to suck fluid in and push it out. It just would not bleed. So I threw 1 more bottle of brake fluid in there, and it finished that side off mint. This driver's side should be pretty simple. It is the shortest trip from the master cylinder brake reservoir setup to the caliper, but I've got the line lock on there. So I don't know. That might end up being picky, because there's extra tubing and hoses, and there's the line lock setup. That may or may not be an issue. I don't think it will be, but we'll see. So let's get this driver's side finished. All right, guys, you might notice something different here. I'm in a different shirt and my beard is back. I actually filmed that a couple weeks ago, but I didn't realize I didn't film an ending to it. I was editing the video and bam, the footage just ended. But the garden hose brake bleeder pressure system worked great. I was able to finish the bleeding job. I've driven the car, you know, tested the brakes, no issues, and I've had 0 issues with the brakes. So, and that bleeder ended up working really well. But like I was saying, I was able to bleed the entire car by myself, didn't need any help. But before we go, I do have merchandise for sale. Don't forget, the links are always in the description below. First link is to Teespring. I've got my T-shirts and hoodies there. The second link is to my eBay site. You get stickers, key tags, and any parts that I pull off the cars. That's one good way to help support the channel, and all the money I get from that will go further into the builds. So if you guys like the video, give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Thanks and have a great day.